It's time to break free. Break away from the routine to the greens and get lost in the world within. To steer through, to stop, start again, go forth and just let it all go. With JK Tyre's Ranger 80 for the ones who are wild at heart. JK Tyre, total control.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Budget 2021, Reviving the Growth Engine. This is a virtual roundtable discussion where industry experts are discussing the various implications of Union Budget 2021. And specifically, we're talking about the auto industry. I'm Vikram Chandra, founder of Veritergy. A few days back, we spoke to auto industry leaders about their expectations from Budget 2021. If I remember correctly, a lot of what they had asked for has actually been delivered. But let's take a look at what all the experts actually feel about the budget. Was it a hit or a miss? So very pleased to welcome our guest for today, Saurabh Agrawal, the partner automotive sector tax at Ernst & Young India, Sharad Agrawal, the head of Lamborghini India, Shashank Srivastav, executive director at Maruti Suzuki, one of those who joined us just a couple of days back, and Gaurav Gupta is joining us, CCO from MG Motors. So thank you all so much for joining. Let's first start by just getting your overall take. So why don't I start with you, Shashank? All the things you were discussing, pretty much boxes ticked, right? Scrappage policy, expansionary policies, all of that was there. So how do you take the budget?
Yeah, so I think it was a very good budget. Let me say that straight away. We discussed, if you remember, Vikram, that for the auto industry, any budget which is growth-oriented would be good. We also said that we shouldn't have new taxes, and also that the best expenditure should be in infrastructure, because that's a employment and a income multiplier. And I think that's what has happened. So it is a growth-oriented budget. I think the projections are 11% or thereabout in real terms. Also, I think it's very good because it's also realistic in the sense that the revenues which have been indicated as estimates for the next year are assuming growth of about nominal growth of 14.4%, whereas I think the economic survey talks about 15.5% growth. So I think she has been realistic in the assessment and also quite transparent. I was expecting 7%, some mathematics to be done to show fiscal deficit as 7%. And actually what was shown was probably the absolutely transparent 9.5. And I think the markets therefore have reacted positively also. And we also discussed about the scrappage policy, although we don't have the contours yet. So overall, I think it did meet a lot of things which we discussed, Vikram, in this pack.
Yeah. Sort of when it comes to the transparency in the numbers, I mean, quite often all of us are used to reading budgets and saying what's hidden away in the fine print. Now, I guess the interesting thing is that when you're saying something like 9% fiscal deficit, now whether it's 8% or 9%, I guess she feels it doesn't really matter. So you might as well tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And the same comes from if you're saying we don't have to return to fiscal consolidation for another, 5 years. Then that means you don't have to worry too much about hiding stuff. Did you still find things hidden away in the fine print or no?
So I don't think so that things were hidden in the fine prints, because what was the expectation of the industry that was delivered? Rather, industry was expecting a COVID cess on higher income groups or on some of the customs part as well. But there was no COVID cess, which shows that overall it was a budget towards making Bharat Atmanirbhar. The commitment was shown by reiteration of PLI scheme, and in all the 13 sectors, including auto, where the PLI scheme is proposed to be rolled out, there has been an increase in custom duty rates to promote localization into India. So overall, I'll say that there was nothing bad in the fine print.
Gaurav, your take on that? Because, I mean, the broad contours of the budget first, and then I'm going to get into specific things like, import duties being hiked in a couple of areas. What was your overall take, though, Gaurav?
I think overall, like Shashank and Saurabh have said, it's a very future and a growth-oriented budget. The fact that we did not have new additional taxes in many sectors is very positive. Again, investment in infrastructure, is a virtuous cycle. It's going to help in the future. Importantly, again, is the entire focus in very clear areas: home, rural development, health. So all these areas actually is going to make and help in the direction of Atmanirbharta. So overall, I would think we would say that it's in the right direction. It's really played on as per the expectation, in some areas better than expectations. So we'll keep it. The details are going to come in a few days from now, and that's when we will see some more more deep diving and seeing how it all plays out. But as of now, all in the right direction, all positive.
Okay, Sharad, do you share the general enthusiasm for the budget, or is there something which you didn't quite like?
No, I think absolutely. It's a very positive and progressive budget. It strikes a very good balance to push the recovery of the economy as well as to drive growth. Clearly, the focus of government is to boost the infrastructure investments. They have increased the capital expenditure by 35%, which is clearly showing the direction that how they are planning to boost the economic activity, create more jobs, focus on healthcare, very positive step, and also a very clearly defined target for disinvestment. So there are very positive moves. I think the most positive part of this budget is that the tasks which are laid down, they are very clear, very transparent, and now the focus should be that how these tasks are getting implemented in the time frame which the government is setting. And if we see that happening, I'm sure that economy should recover very positively in the budget period what the government is setting for us.
Okay, let's just look at some specific proposals and then sort of look ahead a bit as well. But when it comes to specific proposals, I mean, Sharad, I keep wondering, selling Lamborghinis in a country like India with the sort of roads that you have, I'm sure one of the first things you look at is how is the highway program and the expressway program rolling out? Because otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of having a Lamborghini if you're driving it at 30 kilometers an hour on potholes?
Yes, I agree. And this budget clearly lays the direction towards building more road infrastructure, urban infrastructure. So this is clearly a very positive sign, especially for super luxury brands like us, because congestion in cities is one of the key bottleneck what we also have for growth. And investment in good highways is definitely going to give opportunity to more and more people to enjoy their supercars or luxury cars in the right environment. So I think it is a very important aspect to drive the growth for the super luxury, and that's a step in right direction from the government.
Okay, Gaurav, if you can take us through I saw a lot of comment after the budget about what's happening with import duties, make in India, how does it change the dynamics between assembling or making in India versus importing a complete car. I know for someone like Sharad, I guess it's really tough to really be assembling or making in India at those volumes. But how does this change some of the dynamics for you and for other players?
I'll answer that, but I also want to add to what Sharad just mentioned. I think the key part for the investment in the infrastructure on the highways is going to be very critical, especially for our commercial vehicles. So overall, once you have the highways, so you have employment, of course, but the movement of goods and transportation really becomes more efficient. So overall, it's going to actually move in a very, very positive direction. And some of the lead indicators like vehicle sales will really help us moving forward. In terms of, you talked about imports as well. Frankly, today it's all about the focus on how you make in India, and that is where I think the movement is in the right direction. Already, for us, for example, we've got a very, very high level of localization for the MG Hector, for example. As well as we are working on more programs. So companies will actually work in the area that really helps them to, one is expand the footprint of their vendor base within the country. That is one. Second, what all can they increase in terms of the local manufacturing as well? And overall, this helps you in multiple ways, be it foreign exchange, be it import duties, and drive towards Atmanirbharta. So for a company like ours in particular, I would say we are actually working in the same area already, whether it's in the area of normal IC products, but also in the area of electric vehicles.
Okay, interesting. What do you make of it, Shashank? Let me get you in on that point. Your take on how some of these things will play out, especially there are some companies that have already been doing a lot of manufacturing in India. Do they have an advantage now with this entire Atmanirbhar program, or no? Can anybody come in and pretty much do it?
Yeah, so I think pretty well, I pretty much agree with what Gaurav just mentioned. One, when we talk about, and I'll also touch upon that infrastructure spending, the expenditure close to 2.5% of GDP. If you look at that national infrastructure pipeline, which she mentioned, in which almost 50% of it is in energy, road, and urban infrastructure. Infrastructure and also railways, I think 12% went to the railways of that national infrastructure pipeline project. Now, it is not only income multiplier and an employment multiplier, which obviously will affect the overall growth and hence positively the auto sector. It also gives us advantage in terms of logistics, which is very important whether you are an exporter or even for your local logistics. It adds to the competitiveness of manufacturing. And manufacturing, I felt one great point she mentioned was that she's looking at a double-digit sort of growth for manufacturing, which is something which we have never heard before. So we were always tinkering with a few percentage points of growth. But the very fact that she mentioned about a double-digit growth in manufacturing, obviously there has to be a very smooth logistics and a cost-effective one at that. So I think overall it would help manufacturing. And as regards the customs duty on some components, I think they are all largely produced in India in anyway. So it's sort of a addition to the that Atmanirbhar idea where you are protecting domestic manufacturing. For Maruti Suzuki, of course, our localization levels are very high. So I think there, as we go along with the new products which are coming in, probably that would be actually a very big advantage for us as a.
Okay, sort of on the let me just come to you for some of the taxation aspects. Obviously, just help us decode this. What happened with customs duty? What happened with import duty? There was some tinkering around in petrol also, because that's again does affect the auto sector. Some tests, this agri infra cess came inside, but they were at pains to say that no, it doesn't mean that petrol is going to become more expensive. What exactly was happening with taxation, and specifically when it comes to the automotive sector?
So let's go one by one. So primarily, if we see the move of increase in customs duty was done or has started happening from last year itself, which was to promote localization. Some components and parts were left out where the increase in customs duty has been done this year. Primarily, the approach is to do as much localization as possible. Further, with the introduction of a production linked incentive scheme, which they are promising, wherein we are hearing that they are looking at 80% localization, which means that the ripple effect of the same will be seen in the entire sector by people at a mid level or MSME level also growing in the pack along with the big people. Overall, if we see, the thrust has been to make Bharat Atmanirbhar. Second part, which is important, which may have been missed, is that government is aiming towards bringing in certainty of taxes, transparency, and distillation. So over a period of 3 years or two, means close to 3 years, in GST, there has been a lot of transparency which has been built and automation has happened. Similarly, on the customs front, they are promising a lot of automation by way of distillation of the entire import process, which includes filing of bill of entry, etc., which all the companies needs to look into in order to reduce their cost of CHAs, etc. So overall, if I have to see, government is moving towards transparency, certainty, and localization.
One of the comments, not so much in the budget, but when you heard members, people from the CBDT and the finance ministry talking after the budget, there was a lot of statements being made about we actually don't want to be in a system where tax rates are tinkered with on an annual basis. And let's face it, even with this government, that has been happening the last 3 or 4 years, right? Even as you're trying to change things around, there are lots of little taxes which are going up and going down, and 5% goes to 7.5%, and you have some cess and you have some surcharge. And what the government seems to be saying now is, and hopefully acting upon as well, is we're going to stop doing all of this. Budget should be boring exercises. Taxes shouldn't go up too much. You should say 3-4 years, this is likely to be the taxes, so people can then take decisions based on that. Is that genuinely, in your view, the direction we're moving to, or is it just lip service?
Absolutely bang on. So they have specifically said in one of the laws that for the next 2 years, whatever exemptions we give, those will continue for a minimum period of 2 years. Also, I think you raised the point of on AIDC, and I think there was a lot of buzz once the AIDC was told around petroleum products, etc. It was seen that it will increase the cost. Effectively, it is not increasing cost in majority of the products wherever AIDC has been levied. In such cases, the basic customs duty has been brought down. So overall, it is neutralizing the effect. So on the petroleum and diesel products also, there is a neutral effect of levy of AIDC because of reduction in other duties.
Okay, let me get the rest of the panelists to weigh in on that. Shashank, what would you think is really important? This part of it, let's not change taxes at all for a period of time too much. Let's have certainty. Because I keep hearing from industry two things. One, there are too many tax flip-flops, and there's certainly too many regulatory flip-flops and too many policy flip-flops, and that makes it very difficult to do business. Is this one of the, if you had to give feedback to the government, would this
absolutely? I think that was one of the...
Carry on, please.
Yeah, so I think this was one of the big requirements of the economy and of all the industry players, that whatever the policies, the stability in policy is essential, and there has to be a long-term plan or a long-term course which has to be shown to the industry players. And it is not just relating to taxation. In case of auto industry, for example, it also relates to other things like emission or other regulatory things. Auto industry has been asking that one of the big reasons why in the recent past there has been some extra cost effects and cost of acquisition of vehicles going up is because of frequent change of regulation. And I'm not talking just of taxation, it's also about regulatory things. So clearly, a well-defined, a very well laid out map of both on the taxation front as on the other things like emission and safety front, the regulations can be, of course, a very good factor for giving confidence in the industry for them to decide on investment and a definite path for them to plan for. I think with this budget, there does seem to have that sensation, that sense seems to be now coming and diffusing across the industry, that it does appear that the government wants that stability in policies as also a very well laid out plan for regulation.
Sharad, would you share that view? Or, I mean, obviously when big companies, when international companies are wanting to come and look at India and invest in India, is that one of the things that you keep hearing from the principals overseas, that, you know, we don't know what could happen tomorrow? Policies could change, taxes could change, so on and so forth.
So I think when we get a premium car industry or a super luxury industry, there are different challenges. Yes, on one side, the government is pushing for localization because that's the mass volume industry. But for a premium volume industry, the volumes are so small that we have limitation in terms of localization. And for a super luxury brand like Lamborghini, which operates only from one manufacturing facility for all the global volumes, the localization factor does not come into play. So what we expect is a consistency in the tax structure, which is visible. There is some changes in the component duties, which will have slight impact on the pricing for the premium sector. But overall, I think things remain constant. But what we were requesting from the government, and what we also anticipate, that in time to come, the government should start looking at premium car industry differently, because this industry has different dynamics to operate in the country, and it will never be the same as what we see in the mass volume segment. So today the industry is bound to pay the hike in GST plus 22% cess on it. And given the nature of our consumers in India, we still see that even for luxury buying, we are a value conscious country. See that the pricing in India is about 2.5 times of what they get to see in Europe, US, or in developed markets like Japan. And see the price value equation, they don't see it very favorable. And this is not letting this segment to grow. And if you look at the last decade, you can see that the segment is always seeing up and down. And the super luxury segment, especially, is just constrained to about 300 cars in a year. Given the population of HNIs and the growth of billionaires in these countries, which is second highest in the world, this does not reflect. And we will anticipate that at some stage the government should look into this and see that how they can rationalize the cess, especially to make the cars more reasonable and priced in what it is there in other parts of the world. And so that government can accentuate the demand. And I'm sure when the consumption is increasing for these premium segment cars, the absolute collection for government will go up. Because what if you look at the volumes are not growing and only the taxes are going up. So the government is not really looking at the true potential what this segment can bring in terms of
Okay.
the
So,
consumer experience as well as the tax revenues what they can collect.
Gaurav, so some sort of a hint towards a Laffer curve, even when it comes to cars. And I know this was said, Shashank, we all were discussing this 3-4 days back. Yes, there's very high taxation on cars. Frankly, I think all of us said this is probably not going to be the budget where taxes are going to be cut. You should consider yourself lucky if taxes aren't raised. But in this budget, the possibility of a cut was less. But Gaurav, is there that Laffer curve sort of a thing, which I think is being referred to by Sharad? If taxes come down, it actually could drive a lot more people buying vehicles, and then revenue also goes up at some point.
Taking cue on what we have all discussed today, I think I totally agree with all our panelists. I think the important part has been that predictability. That is one which is very, very important from a confidence building measure. That's going to be very helpful. The second that we've all referred to also is the roadmap. So once in any industry, for anyone looking at investing, not only from a fresh investment, but also in the current status. For example, if you're looking at expansion of our operations, a clear roadmap is always very helpful and gives confidence and as well helps you in planning. So I think in that perspective, the direction that we have taken is really very commendable. It's a start for us. And I think as a country, we will, of course, traverse the journey and see how it plays out. In terms of overall taxation, I think definitely, the moment we have more disposability, more disposable income in people's hands, it always helps overall economy. I think one should look at after, especially the year of pandemic, I think very important is to first see where the country is moving. I think all of us, it's like that is the mothership, where the direction of the country is moving. So in terms of health, etc., all of the areas are priority areas. Then comes the disposability factor. And I think over time, the way we have seen in this budget, I'm sure we're going to be seeing some kind of rebalancing of taxes in years to come. And I think that is where we'll start seeing some even more positive trajectory. We already heard about a double-digit growth in the manufacturing sector. We're seeing, a single-digit fiscal deficit to be contained on the double-digit. I think these are all trends moving to drive the overall factor. And I think, like I'm going to repeat here, rebalancing of taxes, increase in disposability over time. And then most important right now is coming out of pandemic and making sure the country is more stable and more healthy in the way forward. I think that is the key, and I think the budget is working in that area.
Yes, I mean, I guess that you're absolutely right. The automotive sector, if the economy is doing really well, and if infrastructure is happening, economy is doing well as part of it, but also infrastructure is being rolled out and roads are being built and highways are being built and all of that, then I guess that's long-term good for the industry. But this time there was a very specific policy as well, which is something the automotive sector has been asking about. And I do want to now turn our attention, maybe end by looking at that, which is the scrappage policy, obviously. So Shashank, you want to go first? That the scrappage policy that was announced, is this what you were want? I mean, you're obviously wanting it and hoping for it. Is there? I guess we have to still wait to see the fine print. But does it sound on balance what you would have hoped for?
Yeah. So scrappage policy was not announced. What was announced was that the scrappage policy will be announced. So
yes, the direction will be that there will be a scrappage.
Yes. So as far as that is concerned, it's a very, very welcome thing. As you would recall when we discussed what the industry wanted from the budget, one of the things which came up from the panelists was the scrappage policy. And not only from the point of view that there would be additional demand for new cars in case the scrappage happens, either based on the age of the vehicle or the fitness of the vehicle, but also from the point of view oil import bill, because these vehicles which will go out are much less fuel efficient. So if they are replaced with vehicles which are more fuel efficient, obviously the import bill on oil comes down. So for that reason, it was thought that the scrappage policy would be very good. There are, by the way, while the indication seems to be 20 years and more vehicles for passenger vehicles, there are about 39 lakh vehicles which fall in that category. Some of them may have gone out of operation. We still sort of evaluating that. And as you said, we will have to wait for the fine print. Is it going to be purely based on a incentive based voluntary policy, as was mentioned? Would it be a disincentive based voluntary policy? So we need to look at the fine print, and I am afraid that unless we get that fine print, it is so difficult to conclude anything about this guy. However, I must repeat that the fact that the government has now announced that there is a detailed policy coming in is a very welcome thing for the auto industry.
Saurabh, if you're reading between the fine print or between the lines of what was actually announced by the government, what would be your sense of what is coming?
So see, if we talk about this is a first step towards the mandatory scrappage in India. So the scrappage policy was being talked about since last 2-3 years, but there has been no formal announcement from the government. At least this is a move towards that formal announcement. That is one. Of course, when the FM also talked about a fitness certificate, so I don't think so India has ever talked about a fitness certificate. So as a part of this thing, they are saying that while it is a voluntary scrappage policy, where in case of a PV, it is a 20 years, and in case of a CV, it is a 15 years period. But there is a requirement for you to get a fitness certificate. Now, how that fitness certificate will work is a question mark. One more question to all the industry players over here on this panel is that how this 15 years and 20 years is aligning to the Delhi NGT judgment of 10 years and 15 years, wherein the Delhi National Green Tribunal has held in it to be 10 years and 15 years period. What is your take? Means, well, whether the scrappage policy will prevail or the NGT judgment will prevail around that?
Anybody want to take that question?
Shashank? I think, too early to, I'll just take a quick response on that, Saurabh. I think, Shashank alluded to that. We also have been discussing in terms of what the NCR policy is versus, what the scrappage policy is. But since the policy of the scrappage policy is not yet announced, so without the detailing available to anyone, it'll be very, too early to start comparing the two as to which one would prevail. We hope that both complement each other and move in the right direction. That would be my quick response to you, Saurabh. But Shashank, I would like to hear your views as well.
Yeah, so I think I agree with what Gaurav just mentioned. The registration is actually a central subject. So there probably different states can have something more stringent than what is actually announced by the as a central guideline. So we will have to wait and see for what exactly the policy is. Remember, the NGT one, which is being alluded to, had different benchmark years for diesel and for gasoline. So we have to wait and see whether that distinction will be made in the policy of scrappage, which is expected to come shortly.
Right. One last comment, Sharad, on if you're looking at the trends and what is the direction that we're moving in. So yes, scrappage has been announced, the infrastructure will roll out, that's being announced. But if you're reading between the lines, again, it's also very clear that Swachh Bharat, Swasth Bharat, cleaning up the air, cleaning up air pollution, all of this is a certain direction, which even if it didn't happen in this budget, may well be pointing to a future which will be more electric, more renewable, more eco-friendly. Is that something which you think is almost a given that everyone should start planning for? Sharad? Hi, Sharad, you still hear me? I'm asking about whether you think electric vehicles on the sentence. Carry on, sorry. Okay, I don't think Sharad
Sorry, I
can
think the
hear me.
reception is bad. I'm not able to hear your question.
Okay, I was just asking if the electric vehicles are coming and will be coming soon. Okay.
Yes, I think the overall direction for the global auto industry is very clear. Electrification is the new, mega trend which we will see across. And premium and luxury industry is definitely going to follow that. I cannot say the same for Lamborghini, because Lamborghini is more about experience, the touch, feel, and the sound. So while we have presented some concepts on electric mobility in Lamborghini, but what we see that for the next decade we will focus on hybridization. But yes, overall the premium car industry and the overall industry will move towards electrification, because clean fuel is going to become more and more important. The environment restrictions, regulations will become more and more stringent in times to come, and I think this is what is the direction the industry has to follow.
All right, Sharad. Gaurav, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I think the current budget is, while it's silent on the direction on electric vehicles, we also believe that, an important subject like electric vehicles, we've already seen the FAME evolving over the last few years. So I'm sure that during the course of the year also, we will have some more, inputs and some more developments in this area. Uh, as a company, NG is very committed and working in the electric vehicles area. We launched one car. We are working on another introduction soon, and also to develop the ecosystem. But that's one company. But more and more players are coming in, and I think all the stakeholders, the government, the players, all the stakeholders are coming together in this area. So while it is silent right now on the budget, but and all of us are optimistic that there will be an evolution of the FAME policy soon to come, and maybe some new additions as well to drive this, both state as well as central as well.
Okay, Shashank, last word from you then. Do you agree with that? Actually, I mean, obviously, whatever decisions Maruti Suzuki takes will be essential in the path that India itself takes. Budget silent, but you think that's still very clearly the direction, and that comes across in all of this commitment to healthcare and other things.
Yeah. Yeah, so as far as electric vehicles are concerned, I think there is a broad agreement within the industry that both from the running cost aspect for consumer as well as the emission for the environment, I think that's the way to go in the future. It's only a question of when. And when depends on how quickly the battery technology evolves to reduce the cost of acquisition for the customer, and also how the infrastructure for charging goes up. Remember, in the world, just around 2% of the vehicles are electric vehicles for similar reasons, and in fact, more so probably in India. And that is why we believe that one of the things which government has done in the budget has been talked about. They have talked about the expansion of the CGD, the CNG infrastructure for 100 more cities. And I believe that till the time when the powertrain cost for electric vehicles become less than the powertrain cost for the ICE engines, I suppose the path towards that is hybridization, which I think Gaurav also mentioned. And hybridization means, which Sharad mentioned, I think, the hybridization is, I think, the way to go, and all in the process to electrification. And also the second thing, which I just mentioned, is the alternate fuels like CNG, which the government seems to be encouraging. And there was a mention in the budget that 100 more cities will be added to this CNG network. For Maruti, CNG, by the way, last couple of years, while the industry has gone down 18 to 20% each of this year as well as last year, but the CNG has grown more than 20%. So I think there is clearly a path towards a more cleaner fuel type of thing, but not necessarily purely electric. I think the path is through hybridization, which is what I believe there is still a discussion going on in the government.
All right, I think we are more or less done for time. But Saurabh, if you can very quickly tell us if there is going to be a push for electric vehicles, will it be through mandating, or will it be just through tax relief and tax incentives?
So I think tax relief and tax incentives will have a key role to play as far as India moving towards EV is concerned. One of such steps which has been taken is introduction of a ACC, which is Advanced Chemistry Cell Policy, and allocation of 18,100 crore budget towards the same. But I personally believe there are more steps required and more incentive required to promote EV and get the pricing in order so that people buy the same.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you all so much for having joined us. It was great. I think a broad smile on all of your faces after the budget, which pretty much mirrors what most of the experts have been saying. I think there's some relief there also that, people were fearing that this budget could have a lot of pain. And when that pain doesn't happen, that's the reason why I think there's partly a smile of relief and also a lot of really good measures taken as well. Thank you all so much for joining us, all of our guest speakers, and a big shout out once again to JK Tyre for partnering with us for this entire series. This is us signing off. Stay well, take care, stay safe. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.